Florida is at a pivotal moment as the housing market here continues to shift. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the housing markets of Tampa, Jacksonville, and Miami. We're going to look at some of the areas where prices are pulling back the fastest, where sellers are heaping up price cuts in order to see their homes sell. Because in many of the areas of these metros, we are seeing active unsold inventory reaching levels not seen 6, 7, and 8 years running. And ultimately, we're going to dive in and see what's happening as we go into the fall season. Because one thing that I'm noticing as I look at all the market data across the state of Florida is how much the underpinning unaffordability is affecting the dynamic of buyers' interest in purchasing houses, so much so that we are seeing a record low pullback. We are seeing loan applications, that is buyers entering the market in order to buy these homes across Florida, at levels not seen since 1994. We are seeing home builders stuck on completed unsold homes, particularly through the South markets, including Florida, at levels not seen since 2009. Now, as we do a deep dive and analysis in 3 of the top markets in the country, you're going to notice one major thing, and that's this. We have largely seen weakness for the past 18 months unfolding at the entry market and the mid-range housing markets. That is really homes largely priced from the 200s up to maybe about the $500,000 to $600,000 price range. It's been unfolding largely in the bottom half of the market. People that could come in and buy up entry price homes or even buy entry price homes for an investment aren't doing so. They're not entering the market, even though we have interest rates now for a government loan for a first-time home buyer in the high 5% range for a 30-year fixed. And all the hope and stock we've put into the idea that interest rates coming down would reinvigorate the market, there's no sign of it. As you're going to see, pendings across these 3 markets are looking interesting. But one important change that we're now going to investigate over the past 4 or 5 months is just how soft the cash buyers have gotten. And cash purchasability has been a large mover of the upper end marketplaces, particularly these 3 markets you're going to see today. And something is even happening further up the chain that is new to this entire conversation. But if you own a house here now in one of the big 3 markets, you can't afford to miss this update. And as we dive into the update and the news, dive down below and smash the thumbs up. It'd help out the channel, and I greatly appreciate it. Let's get started.
Record high mortgage levels are starting to take their toll. The mortgage rate is at 14.75%.
Ask not what the Great Reset can do for you. Ask what you can do for the Great Reset.
All the charts you're going to see today, we are pulling largely from 2013 all the way over here on the left side of the chart, all the way down to current day. So the data we're looking at from the start is the Miami metropolitan area. This is the MSA or statistical area given to us by the government. The data itself, before you ask in the comments, comes from the Florida Association of Realtors, most recent data set we have. And we're going to start with months of supply. Months of supply is a factor of how much homes you have on the market and how many buyers you have for those homes. How many are selling on a month-to-month basis? What months of supply is actually one of the best fortune tellers of how busy a market is, how healthy it is. The higher it goes, the more likely the chance of a housing market seeing declines in price. If it goes really high, that is a very cautionary tale that you're going to have sellers really dipping price overall. This is better than looking at anything else. Some people only look at closings and say, oh, all right, well, closings are down. This is a problem. Or they only look at inventory and say, oh, inventory is really, really high. No, it's a factor. You can have high inventory, but there are a lot of buyers at the same time absorbing those houses hitting the market. Now, as we look here in Miami, you're going to see at the top, this is a 6.5 month of supply. This represents a 76% climb in the relationship between homes available and how fast they're being sold. This is a brakes being slammed on this market. Now, I will tell you that Miami has a very high months of supply, probably the highest of all 3 we're going to see today. That if you stop listing homes, and obviously keep in mind, next month, more houses are going to hit the market. But if you just stop adding new ones, it'll take almost 7 months at the current rate absorption to sell all this off. Now, as we dig further into the data, you're going to see the underpinning reasons. And I have to tell you, my friends, this is a stark contrast over the history of the reporting for this market, because you can see it's been very, very low. It's nearly 1.5 months. Like everything hitting the market was gone nearly instantaneously back in 2022. And ultimately, this market stayed relatively hot much longer than the rest of the markets in Florida. But if you cut this line at 6.5 months of supply all the way across, you can see that it spiked above that in early 2019. But largely, the history of Miami has less months of supply. It's usually stronger than it is this moment in time, which is why you start to see markers that it's a bit more buyer favored. And this again has been one of the hottest housing markets in the entire country. The story is changing very fast, according to the data, not me hyping a crash or anything like that. Just look at what it says. Now take a look at active inventory in Miami. This is the unsold units of inventory in Miami. It's approaching 40,000 units. Down here at the bottom, they were just short of 15,000 units, which means that Miami has not quite even seen a threefold increase in this really tight spot, probably one of the lowest points in its history for this entire marketplace to get that low. It just never happens. You can see that this marketplace usually runs around 45 to 50,000 units. So one thing to see, remember a second ago, we started with months of supply. So we took a factor of what's available, but how fast are they selling? You can see as we relate to history, is Miami necessarily oversupplied? Is there a glut of inventory against its history? And you would obviously, being honest, would say no, there's not a crisis of supply in Miami. Okay. So ultimately we have another problem. So if it's not this that's slowing the market down, it's a recent stark absence of buyers in this market. Let's dig further. Now let's look at median sale price. Median sale price, you can see look at the trend, 3 months, it's dropping. Okay. So we had a peak back in June of 2024 at $515,000. By the way, if you're tuning in and you're wondering what this data set is, this is both single family, townhomes, and condos. When you're looking at Miami's data above all the other markets, you have to include its condo mix because Miami's condo townhome mix represents about 65%. It's almost reversed. They have way more condo and townhome transaction history than anywhere else. So it's a huge slice of the Southeast market. You have to consider it all. But look at what's going on in price when you look at it over a 3-month span. It's dropping, and it's dropping again seasonally. So there's a little bit of a seasonal drop, but it's usually not this pronounced. It's obviously plummeting. So it'll be interesting to see because it's gone from 515,000 from 3 months ago to 485,000. Stark change. Again, one to watch for the fall to see where median sell price ends up, because right now months of supply is climbing. This is what I was telling you earlier. If you start to see the month of supply getting longer and longer, you will start to see price dip. And ultimately right now, month of supply, it's going straight up. It's not even going sideways-ish. It's going vertical. All right, the next chart we're going to look at is cash sales in Miami. I will contend this is one of the biggest problems that we're seeing in all the metros in Florida right now. Cash sales are way off, okay? They're not just way off from this recent peak. Look at how this year it's contracting further below last year. And again, this year, 2024, I don't even think, and again, I didn't add all of 2019, 2018, but you can see there's a history of higher cash sales than we're running right now. They're absolutely slamming down. Look at this. Look at the last 3 months. Remember, we just had a crisis in price for 3 months straight. You have 3 low months. Look at the numbers on the bottom. 20% less cash buyers than a year prior. The month prior, 5% down, 24% in June. Again, moving season. Now, this is interesting, okay? Listen. For you to run in Miami negative cash buyer transaction volume over prior year is not a good thing. Like, that is a sign that that's where the pull comes from. That's where the actual market is driven from. And one of the things I told you in the opening monologue is the fact that you're starting to see more of a crunch, more of a wind in the face pushback on the higher price ranges now. Why? The cash is a challenge to get to. Remember where cash comes from. Cash doesn't just come from investment. Cash comes from selling those big old houses up north, or cash comes from the big old houses that are being sold out west. The money moves here, okay? Those aren't selling as fast, and now you have a problem here. So essentially, Florida being that feeder relocation market has to worry about reinvested equity from other states. And I'm telling you, this isn't a Miami story, by the way. We're going to look at a couple other markets. I think you're going to see some trends. Let me give you another view of exactly why this is crazy. This right here is a view of the percentages of all sales that come from cash, right? So if you don't have cash, the rest is left to financing, okay? And that's a huge problem when also in the opening monologue, I told you loan application volume is at a 40-year low. The more one has to borrow to enter the Florida market, that market is evidently slowing. It's a buyer on strike kind of thing. Buyers are opting into renting right now. But my friends, look at this. So right now, only 37% of the mix of closings came from cash. Look at how long it's been since we've been at a 37% range. You have to go back to January of 2021 to find this low of a percentage of buyers actually activating from cash. And ultimately that leaves the finance buyer to stem the tide of the absence of these buyers. And we obviously will have to see if that's actually going to hold up. All right, the next chart we're looking at is dollar volume. This is the dollar volume for the entire marketplace. What's the gross product of all the real estate sales? And I want to show you this so that you can have a point of comparison when looking at the other markets. So it's not all up. It's not always over last year in terms of its total sales. So look at down here. So August was $4.4 billion in total sales. That was down against last year by 8.4%. The prior month, it was up 11. In June, it was down 7.4. In May, it was up 5. In April, it was up 23%. March down. February up. Now, at the end of the day, I would say Miami's going to be up a tad over last year, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a given. It's not a growth market anymore. It's an up one, give some back, down the next kind of thing. And that's ultimately what you're seeing in this economy right now. All right, pendings. Pendings is a leading indicator. Homes are going under contract, and a percentage of these aren't even going to close. Okay, so probably 15% of all these pendings don't actually sell. But pendings in Miami are tanking. Okay, so here's the thing. We saw earlier that we can't rely on cash buyers. And obviously, if pendings are down, that means the finance buyers aren't coming for the rescue either. And look at this. August, down 15% year over year. This is not good news. Now, consider this. In May, the interest rate for the 30-year fix, speaking of the financed buyer, they were facing like a 7.2, 7.4, 7.5%, depending on your credit score, what type of loan you got. Those interest rates drop like 1 percentage point as we come into late July, turning into August, and it's not resulting in pendings. September is the same thing, by the way. Looking at Florida's total inventory for our state, it's getting even higher in terms of unsold inventory, which means that even as a buyer can get into a high 5% rate, they're not. And when the cash buyers are backing out, Florida's going to have some real headwinds in the fall. Because, by the way, Jared, fall is slow. Fall is seasonally slow. It's not something unique. No. The cash buyers pulled out in March. Okay? Many of these markets, cash buyers pull out in March. And the finance buyers haven't been there all year. Okay? So they left the party and they didn't even come back at all. So we had 2023. You can see the pendings in 2023 just go down and slam down. And then this year in moving season, it was even worse. It was like this was a crappy wave and this was an even flatter wave. And look at this. Look at the history back here. We used to peak out over 10,000 pendings. We haven't hit 10,000 pendings in Miami in over 2.5 years. And there was a steady 3 or 4 months out of the year back in 18 and 19, and even more so before that in Miami, where you were putting a lot more inventory under contract. And ultimately what you have now, you've had a long-standing argument for Miami that there's just no inventory. And that has been long true. But right now, you do not have homes selling. And you have a contraction in how much transaction volume is being done. And you tell you this, go ask a realtor or loan officer in the Miami area, they'll tell you this is a fact. But this is interesting. You now have 3 times, almost threefold the inventory levels on the market now, climbing every single month, and it's not selling. And pendings are showing the truth of that. And we have the interest rate help, and the buyers aren't still here for it. So where does the levee break to where the sales come back? When does it come back? How does it come back? Because this is a frozen market. Tell us in the comments. By the way, as we move to the next chart, I got to tell you this. If you have your pendings dropping like a rock, it's not a big deal as long as you don't have a ton new listings. So maybe we should look at that. Look at the new listings, way up in 2024. This has been the problem. Your pendings are down. Look at 23. See, look, 23 is way down here for several months, under 10,000 units a month hitting the market. Now you're pushing 12,500 units, well over 10,000 hitting the market every month. You're never pending that. No one's putting that many homes under contract in a single month. So you don't have buying activity keeping up with what's coming on the market. And right now, sellers are back for whatever reason. They held off. They could hold off. They wanted to hold off back last year. They now no longer have the choice. Whatever it is, remote workers that live here, working in New Jersey or California, and they're going back home. They have to go back to work. They don't, make money on their rental anymore, so now they need to sell it. All of these things, whatever it is, there's a precipitous move towards having to bring stuff to the market, and they're not being absorbed. Okay. So it just takes time, right? It takes time. If it continues the way it is, it's going to be very squarely buyer's market. No question. And Miami's already there. It's already a buyer's market by definition, but a transitioning market, a market that's starting to see prices softening, buyers really getting an upper hand in these areas where it has not existed. And every area is different. Okay. This is a huge metropolitan area. You got to do your homework in the local areas because there's going to be certain pockets in here that are red hot still. Okay. There's going to be pockets in here where the condos are under crazy assessments and high fees. They're suffering. Everybody's selling out. Okay. So the picture is going to be different, street by street, block by block, and neighborhood by neighborhood. This is looking over a large area as an index. And here we have closed sales, which is way down. I mean, you're closing what? The last 3 months, 6,000 units, 45% of the last 3 months, more inventory hitting the market than is actually selling. So you got big numbers just sitting out there, and that's accumulating, and that's obviously still the story. Look at this down here, down nearly 10% against last year. July was a great month, and they just held with 2023 back here. And these are terrible numbers. When we're 10% this year, we're 10% this most recent month below prior year in its sell-off, and you're chasing a terrible number. Like weak. It was weak last year. It's pitiful this year. Okay. June down 17%. May down 5%. So again, 24, the closings are just not there, and it's showing up in the data. Now check this out, my friends. This is the new asking price year over year in Miami. Asking price in Miami a year ago, $599,000. This year, $525,000. The asking prices are down 12% against last year. That means sellers are putting their house in the market this year, looking around, seeing the competition going, gulp, I got to lower it. Now, by the way, this is an annual year-over-year look. Look at how high it's been. Look at the fact that most of the time it's above zero. This line right here is the zero line. That means year after year, the average asking price is always higher. Right now, there is a posture change with the sellers. It is shifting. This is rare. You can see 7-year history. It's never been below this line, and it's changing. And again, that's a leading indicator. It's not fast. It doesn't show up overnight. But ultimately, this indicator leads the fact that sales are going to sell off well below what they're asking last year. Okay. And ultimately, that will sprinkle in, and it's going to be headwinds for median sell price as you look at the Miami area. All right, now we are coming to one of the biggest transitioning markets. I would say this one's probably top of the pile for transitioning markets in many ways in the entire state of Florida. We are in the Tampa, St. Petersburg metropolitan statistical area. Months of supply, if you fell asleep or did not watch the Miami update, is the most important readout for what's called supply and demand. This is a factor of if you stop listing all the homes in the marketplace based on how fast they are selling, how long would it take you to sell all the homes off the market? And keep in mind, more are hitting the market. Tampa has a 4-month window of supply. Now, if this goes 5 months, 6 months, that's when you really start seeing trouble. But you can see, look at this. This chart goes all the way to 2013 here on the left-hand side. There is very rarely a point in the past 8 years where this marketplace was even above 3.2. Okay, so you probably had a little bit of this pocket over here in April of 2014 was the last time it was elevated, and that could be the end of the great financial collapse, crisis, cleanup kind of thing, because the tail end of some of that in the marketplace was still coming loose. Like there was a lot of short sales and things of that nature coming from 2012 and 13 and 14, some of these areas. So, but the point is, for it to be at 4 months of supply is very high, and it's gone fast. Look at this. From May of 2023, every single month, we actually finally hit a sideways run from July to August. But look down and below. July represented a 100% increase in months of supply. So this is a big number and clearly one of the highest since 2015. This is something to watch. It's a good thing that we've seen a 2-month kind of flatlining, but is elevated. We'll have to see how this goes. Tampa's active inventory is up 76%. The bottom was 4,085 units. Okay, that was back in February of 2022. Lowest amount of inventory, multiple offers, chaos that ensued. Now it's at 19,000 units. That's over 400% from the bottom. Remember, Miami is around 280%. Okay, Tampa's 400% plus. Miami just isn't even at threefold increase from its bottom. Probably the strongest in terms of its inventory counts. By comparison, Florida as a state is just inside of 400%. If you take the entire state, we're just inside of 400% in terms of the roll up from the bottom. Jacksonville over 300%. Lakeland leading the pack at 600%. And Lakeland, obviously, a feeder to this market that we're looking at right here in Tampa. Median sale price, you can see it peaked up here around $390 in June of 2024. It's had a 3-month run of a decline. So it went from $390 in June, where it stands today at $375,000. So it's kind of retracted by about 5%. And as I mentioned, there's always some seasonality to that. And $390 represents just like a 1.5% distance from the high back in June of 2022. So if you bought a house in June of 2022, you made about $5,000 back in June of 2024, 2 years later. So ultimately, here's the interesting thing. August is actually a decline from a year prior. So price right now is beneath what it was a year ago. You don't say that too often, but look what's been happening in the making. As you can see, it's been heading that way. May, it was up 3.6. June, it was up 2.9. You can see the gap just narrowing, and it finally goes negative. And ultimately, well, we'll see what happens. We got to see more of the data. If new listings are continuing to climb in this market, this is going to be troublesome for Tampa in the fall. Buyers might see some daylight, get some deals. All right, we have cash sales in Tampa, and they are way off. Money is pulling back, and we know we have a problem already attracting finance buyers. We already have weakness from the marketplace where we could say, hey, if you want to get a loan and buy a house, you know, it's 1% cheaper than it was 3 months ago. It's 1% cheaper on interest rate than it was a year ago. Yet we're trailing. Like buyers are out. Buyers are like, I'm not out. I'm not in. Buyers are like, I'm not in this. And here's the interesting thing. Look what's going on really since March. All across Florida, March was down almost 15% from buyers in cash pulling back. April was up 4.8%. May was flat. June was down 16%. July was up 4%, but it was down again in August, 12.5%. So in 2024, we have a problem. Cash buyers are not here. And as we know, finance buyers are not keeping up their end. So the buyers that are financed are like, I'm out, and they've been out. Okay, the finance buyers have been hitting the bricks. It's the people buying $700,000 to over $1 million and multi-mil. Those are now, for the first time in years, and this is an epic sign all across Florida, for whatever the reasons are. I don't know what they are. Maybe the people that are coming from other markets can't unlock their money to come here. And I'm making this point again because I'm assuming not everybody's watching every single city on this video. But I made this point in Miami a moment ago because that's what we see in the data there. We see the data the same in Orlando. So cash buyers, for whatever reason, cash was gone this moving season, and it affected housing markets all over Florida. Now look at cash as a percentage of all sales. You can see that in Tampa, it spiked up around 40% for several months. It really hung around 36, 35% range for the most part for a really long time. And it spends a lot of time in that range. But you've got, look at this. This is what I was saying a second ago. Look at this, 5 straight months. It's just negative. And right here where we are today, 28.7% represents the lowest of all buyers coming from cash since November of 2020. It leaves you to ask, where is the money going? And again, Florida is inbounding equity as a marketplace. That's what you have to understand. Florida's strength is not the local wage earner that lives here full time that wants to buy their first house. They're gone. Okay. Florida is heavily reliant on relocation equity. I sold my house in X. I'm moving it here. Big cash down or all cash purchase and record-setting sales in our market, okay? And it seems as if those roles, at least temporarily, are pulling back. And herein lies the problem: pending sales. Pending sales are tanking in 2024. Tampa's demand is way off, son. It is bad. 11 straight negative months in a row, year over year. Every month for nearly a year straight, month after month, the number drops beneath the year prior. And so essentially what you have is historically low pendings. We already know if you're pending a low number, you're going to be closing a low number. And when I say low, look at this. These numbers in the peak season through the history, I'm talking 2018 and 2019. Think about how many more homes were built in a construction explosion that just took place in Tampa over the past 2 to 5 years. You have way more properties and households over here than you do back here. But every year you spend a ton of time pending houses at 7,000 to 8,000 units month after month, much of the year. Look at this. Not even reached 6,000 once the whole year. And it's far worse than last year. And last year was epically low. But as I often say, it's not a huge problem if you don't have any buyers buying, as long as you don't have listings coming in mass. So let's take a look at how the listings are coming. Man, oh man. It's almost like we're looking at Miami again, because Miami's got the same charts. Remember a second ago, we were looking at how many homes month after month are going under contract for a buyer. Remember, they were all way down here. They're not even getting above the 6,000 line. Look at how many homes are hitting the market. Sellers are going, I got to get rid of this thing now for whatever reason, all the reasons we know about. My assessments are going through the roof. I can't make any money on my rental. I got to move back out of town because of remote work and all this other stuff. Look at how high these are even over 2023. You got to go way back to like August 2022 to find the volume of homes hitting the market as we do now. Now, here's the thing. We have a normal range of new listings finally back again, meaning this: sellers, for all the reasons, are now comfortably going, it's time to put my house on the market. And they're doing it at pre-COVID levels. The numbers that we will put up in 2018, 2019, you're seeing those now. And again, that's a good thing because there was nothing going on the market once the market slowed down. Ever since interest rates went from 3% through the roof, sellers stopped. All this is way down. These are leveled out numbers. And buyers' volume dropped way down with these numbers. So the market wasn't so soft. But now you've got a lot more coming and you have a lot less buyers. And now the cash buyers are pulling out. So now you got the low end and the mid range already suffering, already seeing big spikes in year over year inventory, but you're going to see it all across the market now. You're going to see it stretch from even, move up, luxury range. Going to feel the hit from this kind of stuff. Closed sales are down against pre-COVID. Look at 19. Look how many homes we're selling. 6,500, 7,000. You kind of spend a lot of time throughout the year. You have some downward spikes in the fall. Down here, 4 to 6, But you had moving season way, way up here, okay? Look at this. You hit the 6,000 line. You even hit it. 5,900 units was the most closings in a single month. That was May of 2024. And most of the time it was below 5,500 units. So if you cut 5,500 right here, look at this. Just sagging, terrible numbers for a huge area of Florida. Just not seeing the sales. Now, the next chart I want to show you is price cuts for the Tampa MSA. Now, you can see red and orange, elevated price cut activity. Anything blue, diminished. So Key West, blue. No one's cutting prices down there. Look at this. Tampa has the highest percentage of price cuts. Lakeland's got 29%. Lakeland should have more. They got a lot of inventory. More than likely, they're dropping prices from the jump, so people may not have to reduce them as much. In Orlando, again, 29%. By the way, you can catch Orlando's updates on its own channel. Jared Jones, Orlando Living, check it out. But let's jump into my favorite data point, median list price year over year. This, my friend, shows you what sellers are bringing their houses to the market against last year, okay? Take a look at this. Look where it's going. This is your asking price, Tampa. It's negative 5.5%. Last year, September, the median ask was $439. This year, you're starting your price at $415. Okay, so it represents 5.5% drop. Now that means that if you're starting them low, you negotiate a few more points, you're going to start to see softening price. And again, this is the zero line. You can see over this entire 8-year span that almost never, in fact, I don't think ever, do you see a year go by where you're asking less than prior year. Setting a new trend, okay? And again, this does not mean your home price is going to fall 8%. It's like, okay, we're starting them 5% below against last year. They're eventually going to sell, and they're probably going to negotiate another 2, 3, 4% more off the price. Does that mean we're going to see a 9% price pullback? You could see something around it. You never know. This, again, this is part of your data, okay? So some homes are going to outperform this. Some will even perform worse. So it doesn't constitute every single sale, and it may not actually swing your numbers in the near future that far, but it does give an indication that there's price softness. There is price down movement, that the forecast is down, negative. More than likely, you are going to see continued erosion of the median sell price. You're already seeing it. This is the leading saying that it's continuing, okay? Till this bounces back and you start to see a little bit more seller control, you got price weakness. And we'll have to see how this shakes out in the fall and going in the spring of 2025. All right, everybody, let's look at Jacksonville, metropolitan statistical area. This is going to be really Duval County, St. John County. We got just north of Palm Coast on the map, St. Augustine, Jacksonville, surrounding, really the greater Jacksonville area. What an update we have for you today. Look at this. Months of supply. Months of supply is if you stop listing homes, how long would it take you to sell through all the inventory that's there? Months of supply is a best measure for supply and demand that exists. My favorite tool to kind of understand how busy a market is. What you see here at 4.6 months of supply. This is second only to Miami. But here's the problem. 4.6 months for Jacksonville is not the same as 6.5 months for Miami. And I'll tell you why. This is a 9-year high for Jacksonville. And ultimately, as you see, you're going to see when a marketplace does this, you're like, oh, Jared, what's the big deal? It'll sell everything off in 4.6 months. It's not about that. It's about the fact that like 4 months ago, it was 3.9 and now it's 4.6. And the longer this gets this way, it has ramifications on your home price. We're going to take a look exactly what's going on because this is going to get interesting, my friends. Active inventory, boom. Look at this, my friends. 10-year high. You have to cut a line all the way back to July 2014. The bottom end of Jacksonville, February of 2022, 2,982 homes when the market had low, multiple offers. It was the end of the peak. This was when the market was like its last gasp of energy before the interest rates shot from 3 to 7% and the brakes are applied. Look at this. It is now 10,400 units. It has climbed almost 50% over same month a year ago. It's gone straight up. That is a 300% climb from the bottom. And again, to give you an example, Florida large has gone close to 400%. If you take all the entire state, and in places like Jacksonville are the worst. They had about 1,000 at the bottom, and they're at 600% over that. So Jacksonville, for its own, for its own inventory, it only took it to triple. And then ultimately it's at a 9-year high. So a 9-year high is important. So even though it's only climbed 300% from its base, the fact that it's got more houses out there than it's seen in a very long time is a problem. It will have its own unique issues for this particular market. So let's look at the sale price. Now you can see here, there was a peak back in June of 2022, right around 375,000. And then Jacksonville never got there again until this summer. They reached right around 379. So about 2 years after the peak of June 2022, interest rates surge. It took a home buyer, if you bought a home back in June of 2022, right about 3 months ago to get within a few grand over what you paid. Okay. And again, that's 2 years of time. Look what's happened since. So something is happening because it's not seasonally normal for you to see a big pullback. Now, again, like May, June, peak moving season, $378,000 price. Last month, they posted 360. Okay. That's $18,000 off the peak of this year. And the real important thing you need to understand is this. This is a negative, year over year negative to last year, median sell price. That is very uncommon, okay? This isn't something we've seen yet. So if you look at all the prior months below, you see it was always positive. So whatever has happened, this moving season, the air has come out of the tires. And this isn't just, I'm not picking on Jacksonville. We could go market by market throughout Florida, and there's an interesting change that's taking place. And again, don't roast me in the comments. I don't want to hear it. I'm going to call for a crash. That's not my point. I'm telling you, you can see the data. You can't go around and see negative median sell price year over year. It's just not, it doesn't happen. But there's a bigger story. Let's dive into it. Oh, cash sales. Look at this. It's trailing down. It's all negatives in the bottom, and it's getting worse. And I wouldn't be surprised if in December or in January, this market face plants below the 400 line down here. Like, I have a feeling you're going to see it seasonally trend way down. It's going to get worse. So this has been a larger narrative for all the Florida markets. If you haven't watched the rest of this video, you really should go see Miami, for instance, and Tampa, what we talk about cash sales, because this narrative, look how high it was for about 2.5 years straight. Look at these periods back here where you're running 800 or you're peaking at 800. You're running 750 to 800 constantly. You barely hit 750. You didn't even hit 750 this year. So in a marketplace where you should be 800-900 easy from the cash buyers, you have a percentage. This is Florida, folks. Your money's moving here. It's cash. It's coming from other places. That's who's paying the big price. So if you don't have the cash coming in from these big home sales in California and from New Jersey and from everywhere else, that's a sign that the big buyer, the buyer that's running up the price, they ain't in the market right now. Okay. And this, again, you got to go back, watch. If you skipped straight to Jacksonville to this chapter, go back and listen to the commentary about this and the detriment this is having, because this is across the entire state. This is interesting. This is a very big shift that's unique. It's just happened. It's growing and widening, if anything, but it was starkly glaring when you look at all the data across all the markets, particularly through this past moving season. Something's happened. And the cash buyer was the last bulwark for Florida because the finance buyer, they were already gone. So let's see what's next. New pendings. Pendings are tanking. Look at this. You remember, I told you earlier, you have a 10-year high active inventory count, 10-year high unsold. And your pendings, the pending runoff right here, looks like it did back in 2014. Remember, you have way fewer households back here than you do here. The marketplace is shrinking. It is just barely clipping with 2023. And as I always say, it's not a big deal if you don't have any buyers in your marketplace, as long as you don't have a lot of new listings coming to the market. So why don't we have a look at new listings for Jacksonville and see what's going on there? Look at the new listing count. Explosion, okay? So again, this was the run up to the pandemic market. You can see a lot of listings that took place. It just grew and grew and grew and grew. And ultimately, if all of this carried on, you'd probably be somewhere here. So it might still be a little down from where it could be in time if you weren't having just weird frozen market syndrome. But it's high. It's way high when you consider, look how low it was the past year and a half. And again, this was when interest rates right around here shot up from 3% for the 30-year to like 7%. And all of a sudden, you're like, how did that affect sellers? It did. People just decided they weren't moving at that point. That's what they did. Like, interest rates are 7%. Where am I going to go? Like, I'm not going to put my house in the market. But they're listing now. That game is over. Why are they listing? Who knows? They don't want to keep that rental property anymore. They have to move back, and they can't stay in this remote situation. They have to go back to whatever state they came from. Whatever the reason, there's elevated listings. A lot more. Remember, the pendings are way down here. And you've got elevated new listings, which is what is pumping up the active inventory to a 10-year high. Now, let me show you two more interesting charts to show you how this is culminating in the market. Now, this is the price cuts for the state of Florida, as I showed you earlier. You can see there's two red markets. Good old Tampa, which we just talked about, which has a 35% price cut range. Here in the marketplace for Jacksonville, you have nearly 4,000 listings have undergone a price cut, which represents 32%. Now, let me show you one last data point, which is fascinatingly interesting. This is the asking price against prior year. Look at this. This is the zero line. And again, this is going back to 2017 on the left side of the graph. You can see that entire span of 7 years or whatever's on this chart. Almost every year, there's always a bump in what people are asking against the year prior. You're always usually expecting 3.5%, 4% compounding appreciation. I'm going to ask a little more. If I'm selling a house in the same market, it's going to go a little higher, and ultimately it sells for a little higher. Okay. But look what has happened. And it only happened once back here in like 2018. You have it going into the floor. Now, it takes time. This has been dropping into the floor. It's negative 6%. And here's what I mean. A year ago, September, it was a $425,000 median ask. $425,000 was the cut down the middle. This is the price of the homes coming in the market. A year later, it's $399,000 in the same market, negative 6.1%. It takes time for this. This is a leading indicator. Remember, asking price is the day it hits the market. Eventually, they negotiate even more. So they're starting at 6% below last year. They negotiate 3 or 4%. Eventually, it sells. And the more of this filters into the market, the more of this stays negative. More listings coming in negative. More listings coming in below the market of a year prior. That eventually you start to see the median sale price drop. It doesn't happen overnight. It will take time. But this is telling us that buyers are getting an edge. Buyers are going to be saving money. It ultimately tells you that if you have a house, think about how many FHA buyers bought in Jacksonville. And this is true of Orlando. This is true of Tampa. You have high finance buyers that bought in 2022, okay? Now, right now, the median sale price, if they were to put their house in the market, is well under what they paid in 2022, okay? Now, that type of buyer only put like 3 or 4% down. So this to me means you're also going to see a culmination of more short sales. I think you're going to see, if people get, and recession anchors itself in further, you're going to see situations where when you're having to compete at lower and lower prices to sell your house, if you have to sell it, and if you didn't put a whole lot down, there's a lot of people that are negative equity from the last 2 years. And that is the hard part, okay? Is buyers are looking at the market around them and they're going, it's kind of flat from the past 2 years. Like the FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Like, I got to buy now or it's going to be way worse next year. Well, buyers saw through that now. Like they go, well, if I buy now, I'm better off a little than a person who would have bought 2 years ago. Okay. So the buyers have a vibe, at least they're functioning this way. The buyers have a vibe that time is on their side with waiting. Like, I don't have to rush. Rushing might be worse for me than waiting. Okay. And someone's going to be right and someone gets wrong, right? Someone they taste the bad end of timing, right? Timing the market and all that. And I don't think you need to buy a house that way. I don't think you should buy a house based on, I'm just purely timing market. You need to buy it based on your situation. You buy it based on your family's comfort level and your security, your financial situation. And ultimately, people they're going to buy houses. People find it disingenuous of me to say, hey, you know what? I've been selling houses for 22 years. And at this point, I've closed close to 4,000 homes in my career. And if you're looking to buy or sell, you should call me. People think that's crazy that I would put data out and just, here it is. Here's the data. People are still going to buy. There's going to be thousands of sales in all these markets next month. If you are looking to buy or sell and you want a data-driven approach, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help you out. But as you can see, the markets are changing. And I don't care which market you're in, any of these markets, you need to pay attention where you are, because every street, every zip code, they're all different. We looked at metro level data. Okay, the metro is like looking at the entire market as an index, and it is impacting every homeowner in these areas, because whatever price class you find yourself, you're being impacted by this data. Okay, but each marketplace has its hotter and colder pockets. There's undoubtedly, regardless of any of these data points, there's undoubtedly overperformers and there's even underperformers. There's even opportunities to find bigger discounts than some of the areas where we see price slipping. Okay. So with that in mind, I'm here to arm you with what you need to know to make your own decisions for yourself. Now, I've been off this channel for quite a while and I appreciate your patience in coming back. If you've watched this far, do me a favor, smash the thumbs up, because I doubt this video is going to get carried like the old ones that I used to produce. But since I am back, I want to hear from you. What video would you like me to make next? Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.